Hey guys, how's it going? We're finally doing it. We're doing the tier list video. So, to get some background to why I'm finally now getting to a tier list video after it's been a couple months. Actually, it's been quite a few months. Well, I wanted to make this video after having enough information to feel like I could comfortably make it. I wanted to make sure I played with every character. I watched other people's videos to get their takes, get their thoughts, get their opinions. I wanted to be able to make this video comfortably with as much information as I could possibly have because, well, I mean, the meta shifted in a way. With Dendro being added to the game with update 3.0, it added to the meta. Vaporize, Melt, they're still really good. Freeze is still really good. Electrocharged and physical damage, Superconduct, they're still where they are. But with Dendro being added to the game, it just adds more versatility to team compositions. And it brought up elements in the game that were either lacking or were still good, but just added more diversity and versatility to what we already had at our disposal. So, with that being said, hit that like and subscribe button. It helps out with the YouTube algorithm. It helps get my channel out there so we can build a community. And when you do, you'll get more gaming content, Genshin content, and other games that I really love to share with you guys. And also, hit that notification bell. You'll be informed whenever I go live or upload any new content just like this. So hit the notification bell. Now, before I get into the tier list, I want to state that this is based on my opinion. This is based on my own personal experience with these characters, my personal experiences, my personal enjoyment that I get out of this game is going to be very different potentially from yours. So when you're watching this, understand this is my opinion. This is going to be subjective. So keep that in mind. Now, OP must have the top of the list. These characters don't really need much explanation. Kazuha, great crowd control, great defense shred with Veritas and Verinaire, great AoE, Zhongli, great shields. Aika is one of my favorite units. She is a great cryo main DPS. Shangling was already a really good pyro sub DPS, got even better with Burgeon. Bennett, best healer, best buffer. Raiden Shogun, great electro sub DPS, great battery. Shincho, great hydro sub DPS, great utility with his rain swords and the moderate healing that he does bring. These units are really top tier in my opinion. Eula, one of the best physical DPSs in the game. A nuclear bomb for an ult. Ganyu, great cryo sub DPS, and she can even work as a main DPS if you want to build her in that route. Arataki Ito is one of the best Geo main DPSs. Kind of pretty much is the only main DPS for Geo. Yelan, in my opinion, is interchangeable with Xingqiu. She is really good. Ayato, great versatility as a Hydro sub DPS or Hydro main DPS. Diona brings shields and heals. Great versatile character. Venti, the literal black hole, as I refer to him, the big suck. He is really good crowd control. He is just a little under, in my opinion, with Kazuha, where Kazuha is got more AoE than Venti. And Hu Tao, my personal favorite pyro main DPS. In my opinion, Hu Tao, if you notice, Yoimiya I have him very, very good. Yoimiya and Hu Tao, in my opinion, are very interchangeable. If you have Yoimiya, I would not recommend wishing for Hu Tao. But if you have Hu Tao, I wouldn't recommend wishing for Yoimiya. Like I said, in my opinion, these two characters are interchangeable. I know some people will notice I have Child at very good. That's just because when it comes to Hydro main DPSs, I prefer Ayato because of his versatility, like I mentioned earlier. Child is good, but I feel like Ayato just brings more to the table. That's why I have Child down at very good. He's still, as the tier is called, very good. Every one of these units are very good, and they could potentially be interchangeable based on your personal preference with characters I would refer to as counterparts, like Yae Miko and Hu Tao. Another unit that I think you would notice is Haizo. I have him very good. That is because I think I prefer Haizo over Xiao. And you might be asking why? Because I hate Xiao's gameplay. I dislike Xiao's gameplay so much due to how he is designed, where you have to just do constant plunging damages, therefore you're going up and down, up and down. Whereas Haizo is more of a driver. I prefer that 10 times more than what Xiao does. And you also notice Goro, where I enjoy Geo teams. I keep Goro in very good just because I really enjoy what he brings to the table for Geo. But keep in mind, anyone could easily take Goro and put him in niche or fine. Goro could easily come down here. Real easy. I just got him up here just because I enjoy the Geo comps. Another thing I want to point out is Catalyst characters are not my thing. That's why I have Ningguang at okay if you build them right. Same thing with Klee. Same thing with Yanfei. These characters are fine. In fact, they're alright. They're not my preference. Shinha is really good, but where she only fits in cryo teams, I could easily put her over here at okay if you build them right. You could easily take Shinha down to fine or very niche. Barbara, I think, is pretty good, especially with the clam set. These units right here, as the tier's called, fine if not very niche. As we know, Yunjin is only meant to be as a normal attack buffer. That is a very niche thing. Same thing with Chongyun's cryo infusion, very niche. Sayu is very niche. Even with you trying to do an EM build with Dendro, it's still just a niche thing. It's not helping the unit out very much. And then these characters, I don't think need any explanation. All 4 of these characters are bad. Really bad. So, with that brief explanation out of the way that I feel like some units might need, let's get into the new stuff. With Dendro being added to the game, a lot of units have probably had some impact. Especially Electro. So, I want to start off with Albedo. With his Elemental Mastery buff that he gives everybody after he casts his ult, it is pretty neat, it's pretty unique. It does help out. I've tried it with Keqing. I've tried it with a few other units. It is pretty cool when you apply it to a Dendro comp. But the thing is with Albedo is that he's a unit where if you didn't play the second Dragon Spine event, you're not going to have the sword that really buffs his damage. And that sword happened to be a defense scaling sword that actually gave him the renaissance that he needed. So I could see anyone who doesn't have that sword putting Albedo down here at okay if you build him right. Since I do have the sword, and I can get some really good damage out of Albedo, I'm going to put him at very good. With Dendro being under the game, it's mixed things up. I wouldn't see Albedo's top tier, but he is really good. With that out of the way, let's talk about a unit we have to talk about when we're talking about Dendro. I'm taking Ether and I'm putting him right here because I didn't pick Ether, so screw Ether. Since I picked Lumine, I'm going to have her represent my Dendro unit. Lumine at top tier. Lumine is representing Dendro Traveler. You can say Ether is representing Electro, Anemo, and Geo. Lumine with Dendro or Dendro Traveler. We'll refer to Lumine as Dendro Traveler. Dendro Traveler is right now the best Dendro applicator. Excellent. She is probably the best at doing it until we get a unit that does it better, which I'm assuming that's going to be Nahida. So for now, great. Dendro has made the Traveler a whole different unit. She is great now. Her Dendro application is awesome. And with the Sacrificial Sword, you can make her even to a Dendro battery, which is excellent. And one other unit you could talk about with being a decent Dendro unit is Tighnari. I think Tighnari is pretty good, but I don't see Tighnari as top tier like Lumine / Dendro Traveler. Tighnari is pretty good, but he plays more into a minor Dendro application with his skill, and trust me, his skill's good. I like that his skill even taunts the enemies to get their aggro. But spread, since that's kind of what Tighnari's meant for, is kind of like, well, at least his ult is like a burst ult. You want to pop spread on it, but spread is just not as good as aggravate. It's just, I would say spread's more niche than, whereas aggravate is better because we have more electro units. So I could see Tighnari maybe getting better in the future, but for now I want to say Tighnari would be better fit at very good. And then with our last Dendro unit, for now, collei is fine, just due to us having very limited Dendro units. But because Lumine is just doing what collei was also designed for, but Dendro Traveler just does it 10 times better, she's just fine. I wouldn't say she's bad, but I would say fine. The issue with collei is that she can only apply Dendro 3 times during her ult, whereas Lumine can do it a few more times, which therefore, by process of elimination, you're going to pick the one who does it better, which would be Traveler. With the Dendro units now on the tier list, and this is my opinion, let's talk about the other units that got a lot better with Dendro. Let's start with Yae Miko. Yae Miko was the first unit that I tested, the first character that I tested with Dendro. On my previous tier list, I had Yae Miko at okay if you build her right. Well, in my opinion now, she is very, very good. I would put Yae Miko in the upper part of very good. Yae Miko is excellent, especially with the Gilded Dreams artifact set. I really enjoy just getting her elemental mastery up pretty well, and just watching aggravates. It is nice. Even with her ult, it's nuts. So Yae Miko has gotten a lot better with Dendro. But on the other end, on the previous tier list, I had Lisa at bad, and she was bad. With aggravate, and with spread, or even hyper bloom, she does see better use. I would put Lisa now at fine, if not very niche. And I would say that's a good fit for her. Another character that saw a little bit of improvement, but I wouldn't say too much better, but still pretty good, is Keqing Shinobu. Keqing Shinobu sees a lot more use with Hyper Bloom. Hyper Bloom fits really well for her because her skill is just able to constantly pop non-stop while healing, and that's going to be just launching the Hyper Bloom cores at enemies. In my previous tier list, I did have her at okay, and I do think she's still at that level just because her ult's still trash. Her ult is still insanely trash. You can't defend it. Literally, Keqing Shinobu's value is in her skill. Her ult is garbage. So with the next unit, we'll talk about a newer one, Dori. Dori is a healer, and that's pretty much it. And she's bad. Dori is bad. When you compare our two Electro support units, being Keqing and now Dori, Keqing at least brings value by constantly applying Electro, having that blast radius whenever she pulses out the Electro ring that heals. And since you want to build EM on Keqing, she's going to, like I said, have really good use in Hyper Bloom. Dori doesn't, like I said in my Dori video, the only thing that Dori brings is decent healing. Her energy regeneration is very poor, to the point where it's barely even noticeable. Her Electro application is not good at all, and it only gets a little better with C2. So I can't put Dori on fine, because she's not even, I mean, in my opinion, a fine unit. Lisa is better than Dori. So, as much as I hate saying that, I can't put Dori any higher. She's kind of bad. Another unit that definitely got a lot better, and we'll switch off from Electro and go to Hydro, is Kokomi. Kokomi is a unit that was just alright when she first came out. When the Clam Artifact set came out, it improved her immensely. But with Dendro now in the game, she sees a lot of use now. With Dendro, she has shot up to, in my opinion, top tier. Really good unit, and it's cool to see some units that came out in the past get better, like Kokomi, like Yae Miko, and a couple other units that I have on the list. So, after talking about Kokomi and how much she's improved, let's jump to Kujo Sara. So in my previous tier list, I had Kujo Sara at bad, because really and honestly, she was pretty bad. So now with Kujo Sara, she does see some improvement. Dendro has helped her out a little bit too. But the thing is that Kujo Sara is a really tricky unit, kind of like what I said with Albedo. If you don't have the second Dragon Spine Event Sword, Albedo would probably fall a little low for you. Kujo Sara is in a similar situation, but her value depends on your constellations you have for her. With Kujo Sara, if you only have C0, she is going to be now fine or very niche. The reason I say that is because C2 and C6 change her drastically. C0, you can't pop the Crow Feather in a very convenient manner. You have to pop the skill, then shoot an arrow on the ground to get the Crow Feather buff. Really, really inconvenient in a moment where you're trying to buff your Electro characters. Your only other way of doing that is to get her 80 cost ult up and then pop her ult to switch to another unit, which is still good because you're buffing Electro, and in an aggravate team or even Hyper Bloom, that's going to be nice. So C0, fine, but very niche. Now, at C2 or C6, with C2, you're going to get the Crow Feather right when you pop the skill. That way you skip the process of shooting an arrow at the ground. So you have two convenient ways to pop and get the buff to your next Electro character. And with C6, you get a 60% crit damage to your next Electro character. So with that in mind, if you have C2 or C6, I would say Kujo Sara's at okay if you build her right. And I think that's a fine spot for her. Now, Beidou, with Dendro, she's obviously going to be a little bit better. But my problem with Beidou is that I'm not a big fan of using her, just because I prefer some other Electro units over Beidou. But I do know that Beidou is seeing fine amount of play with how good her ult is, along with aggravate comps. So I would say Beto still fits fine at okay if you build her right. That's where I had her last, and I still think that's a good spot for her. Like I said, I feel like there's other Electro units that shine better. Kind of like Yae Miko, kind of like, I would even say maybe even Keqing, and a couple other units looking at these two. With that being said, I want to talk about another Hydro unit. We're going to talk about Candace. When Candace came out, and I still stand by this, it's her gameplay is a little lackluster. But I don't think she's like any of these where they're just outright bad. I still think Candace has a lot of issues, but I understand that there's also potential gameplay that can make her pretty good. So I would say Candace is probably down here at fine or very niche, which fits her spot really well since she does Hydro infusion, and any kind of infusion is still very, very niche. I mean, we see that with Chongyun. It's a very niche thing, but there's cool gameplay you can do with it. You can pair her up with Ayato, get the double Hydro resonance, buff HP, therefore you're buffing both of them, and you're going to be able to do some pretty cool things. Same thing with, you can buff Xingqiu and do a Hydro Xingqiu main DPS thing. I see where she can be pretty decent, so I would say Candace is fine or very niche. Let's get to let's go official. Official is borderline OP, or at the very least top tier. Aggravate Keqing is pretty nuts. Especially if you have a C6. If you have a C0, I could see, or just a little less, maybe 1 or 2. C6, she might even pop up here at OP. Like I said, aggravates nuts. It's even more busted than Yae Miko. Official, Dendro just took a really good character and just made her more dumb. And that brings me to my next 2 units. With these next 2 units, it's a very debatable topic. The thing is that I wanted to get to before I made this video was I really wanted to compare and test both of these units because they are very similar as they're both Electro main DPSs. With Cyno, you see, Cyno falls into an issue where he's a very selfish character. Not selfish in storyline, but selfish in how his gameplay plays out. With Cyno, I see him being at very good. Cyno really he just goes nuts, just starts destroying everything in his ults. And if you do build him with a fair amount of attack and a fair amount of EM, or if you even manage to get Cyno with his R5 weapon, I could easily see you trying to put Cyno in top tier. I would understand it completely. Especially in like an Aggravate and Hyperbloom comp. It would make 100% sense. I would get it. But when I start comparing Cyno to Keqing, and you start considering rotations, trying to maximize your damage, that way you can clear things a little bit faster. What I noticed was that Cyno's selfish gameplay actually plays more to his detriment. The reason I say that is that when you start popping all your characters' abilities and their ults and trying to maximize Cyno's damage, what happens is that everyone's abilities will time out and go away way before Cyno is finished with his ults. Even Zhongli's shield will fade roughly right before the end of Cyno's ult. And so that really actually plays more into his detriment because now you're doing less damage. Like let's say Dendro Traveler's ult fades away. Well now, eventually the Quicken is going to go away from the enemies and you're just doing base electro damage to the enemies around you. And that won't really be an issue in overworld scenarios or some events. But like, let's say you're at floor 12 of the Spiral Abyss, that's a thing that can most likely happen. And so you're left with Cyno, you're left with an issue where, do I keep just going with my ult till it times out? Or do I just cancel Cyno's ult and just start playing out the rotations and then going back to his ult? Well, that's the thing that could happen. What I noticed with Keqing is that she plays, her ult's a one and done. You pop the ult, she starts slashing around real fast, and then she does one big slash, bam, you're done. And why that's more useful is that you can, at any time, whenever you need to, safely and easily swap to your other characters, pop their ults, get the rotations going, and then swap back to Keqing, and where she has a 40 cost ult, you can just start it back up, activate Keqing's ult, do some slashes, pop her skill, hit some enemies, and then, again, swap back to your allies, pop their ults, rotation keeps going and going. So, why Keqing, I feel, feels a little bit better than Cyno is the ease of use, the comfortability of not worry about her ult, because it's already a one and done thing, and you can more easily pop the rotations with her teammates. That's where I feel like Keqing does a little bit better than Cyno. And where Keqing is also buffing her attack with other talents, and even if you have her constellations, and she's a character it's easy to get constellations with, especially if you have been playing since the early part of the game and losing 50-50s. She's a character that you'll, like I said, most likely have constellations for, and her constellations just really jack up her damage. So I can easily see how Keqing is just a little bit better than Cyno. But when I say a little bit, I mean just a little bit. And for anybody who is watching this and is wondering, well, I mean, I could see Cyno being top tier too. You are right. I could easily take Cyno and just maybe slot him at the bottom end of top tier. Cyno is a good unit. I mean, I'm putting him in very good. He's going in very good. Why? Because he is really good. So that's my tier list for all the characters that are available right now. So let's do some predictions. So Nilo is coming out tomorrow in my time. My thing is with Nilo, since she plays in a very strict team composition due to one of her talents, I'm thinking about her optimally, and at the very best, I see her going in very good. At the very best, I can only see Nilo being in very good. And that's just because if Hoyoverse lets the unique twist to Bloom, where she changes up Bloom Dendro cores to like bountiful Dendro cores, I think that's what they're called, and makes them blow up instantly with her Hydro abilities. If the Hoyoverse lets that be some good damage, I can see her being in very good. But I would not be surprised if, due to her very strict team composition, if that does play a detriment, which I feel like it might, I could see her end up falling down here and find her very niche. But at very best, I see her maybe going in very good. Layla, I see her maybe being in the same spot, very good. And this is just going based on what I've heard for the rumor mill. I could see her being in very good. And then with Kusanali and everything I've heard about her, I could see her being a must-have. I could see Nahida being in a must-have. maybe top tier, but I want to believe Nahida is going to be a must-have. All she has to do is just apply Dendro better than Traveler, and she will be a must-have. But I could see maybe her taking her spot and Traveler going down to very good. I could see that happening too. But I want to believe she's going to be must-have. Because usually Archons are very good or must-have. I mean, you you got 2 of the 3 Archons in the game right now in a must-have. I'm only putting Venti down here in top tier just because I feel like Kazuha kind of power corrupting. So that's where I'm going to assume Nahida is going to be. And for all you guys that decided to skip to the end of the video just to see my tier list, hello. Let me tell you something. This is my tier list, and like I said earlier in the video, roughly in the beginning, this is very subjective. It's based on my opinion. It's based on my experiences with these characters. Your opinion will potentially differ from mine because we're human. We all have our own way of thinking. We're all human beings. We all have our own, like I said, opinions. So if you look at my tier list, you could take some characters and interchange them. You could take Hu Tao and switch her with Yoimiya. I think Yoimiya is a really good unit, and I think Hu Tao is a really good unit. They do similar things, they just do it a little bit differently. So you could easily interchange Yoimiya and Hu Tao. Same thing with Tartaglia and Ayato. I just like Ayato better due to his versatility with his ult being AoE. Goro, you see over here, I could easily take him and put him down to fine, if not very niche, due to him only working with Geo units. But due to me liking Geo units and really love pairing him up with Arataki Ito and smashing everything, I think he's pretty good because what he brings to Geo is really good. So that's what I mean by how my opinion is subjective. Hell, I got Shao down here on okay if you build him right due to the fact that I hate Shao's gameplay. I have Heizo over here because out of spite. The reason for that is because I like how Heizo is a driver for Anemo, a driver type main DPS, which is what I wish Shao was. But Shao is a master of plunging damage, and I hate that. So that's an example of where and why I put some units in some places, because it's based on my own subjective opinion and my experiences with these characters. So with all that being said, let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I would really look forward to hearing your all's thoughts. My only catch is that you be respectful about your comment. If you guys disagree with me, just let me know. I'll be interested to hear it as long as you share your thoughts respectfully, and I'll let you know what I think too. I'm always cool with replying to my comments. And with that being said, hit that like and subscribe button. It helps get the YouTube algorithm working in my favor so we can help build a community over here and help build the channel. Also, hit that notification bell so you'll be informed whenever I go live or upload any new content. And I will catch you guys later.